Happy Friday, everybody. Here we are again to our It's not Sunday, but it's Friday, and we filling in for our Friday moderators who are on the road promoting the Principal Unity East Coast Tour. Tonight, they are in Connecticut, and they are spreading the word about the revolution movement through reading and inspiring many people about Brother Kwame and Brother Hyde Thurman memoirs. So we appreciate everything they're doing and giving us this opportunity to continue what our missions are here on the Second Rainbow Coalition Book Club, where tonight we are going to get into our brother book, brother Elder Conrad of the Black Panther Party, My People Are Rising, Memoir of a Black Panther Party Captain, Aaron Dixon. So I understand that this is a good book. I heard nothing but a lot of great reviews. We are on the back. You have some forwarding from Carnell West, Bobby Seale, Laura Chrisman. So I'm excited to read this as well as everybody else here. And I want to introduce my co-moderators. Yeah. So if y'all can introduce yourself individually, I appreciate it. And sister, we can start with you, Miss Veronica, and then we can introduce our Conrad Elder, Miss Leslie Willis.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. We wouldn't have it any other way than to be here on a Friday. Right? It's not Sunday, it's Friday. People usually hear our voices on Sunday, but it's Friday. You are not confused, it is Friday. My name is Veronica, and I am honored to be here. And I'm glad to see that there's other people on here with us. At the end of a work day, it's not the easiest thing to maneuver things around to make it. And like Sister Annie mentioned, with the Principled Unity Tour, we have some people that are out, but they're with us in spirit. We are with them in spirit, and looking forward to starting this book as well.
All right, thank you, sister. I have to get some hand lotion. Okay, and our honorary Conrad Elder woman, Miss Leslie Willis. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you. I have to live up to that now, I guess. Well, my name is Leslie Willis. I live in Chicago, and I am part of the Chicago Committee for a New Society here. And I also have been happily connecting with the Second Rainbow Coalition. I think these book groups are awesome. Can't wait to, this is a beautiful book we're going to get into here.
Oh, great.
I have to say that the man is my peer too. So when he talks about history, I know this is true. It's a reflection of what I remember and what I've read. Yeah.
Oh, good. And of course, everyone, I am Sister Anna from Norfolk, Virginia. I'm happy to be a part of the Custodian Rebellion, as well as with the NERD, as well as with the Second Rainbow Coalition Book Club. So what we are going to do is, one, appreciate and acknowledge our ancestors for passing the torch and giving us the blueprint to further our information, as well as our experience and new experience as far as in the revolutionary movement, where we dare to struggle, dare to win. And we will begin with the statement of unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition, and then we're going to get into the read. Anyone interested in starting off with the prefix or?
I'll start us off, sister.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sister Veronica. Go right ahead.
My pleasure, sister. So we'll start off with the preface. It says the U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to reservations or concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. And the statement of unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition reads as follows. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, the Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle. He said that it's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, such as the police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we establish our programmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what this Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people, boots on the ground.
All power to the people.
Oh, Black power.
What a great statement we've got.
It is.
It really
Yeah.
is.
It's great.
And we
It
have,
really Oh, go ahead, sis.
no, I was just gonna read the various members of the coalition.
Okay.
So we have the New African Black Panther Party. I'm not too sure if anybody was able to check on this, but I think somebody mentioned that the American Indian Movement New England chapter had recently been voted in.
Right.
The White
I don't
Panther
know.
Party.
Mhm.
What's that, sis?
I don't know if it's confirming that, but yeah, the latest that I did hear is the one up on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we have the White Panther Party, the Green Party of New Jersey, the Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de los Brown Berets, Fury, which stands for Feminist Uprising to Resist Inequality and Exploitation, and of course, NASO, North Alabama School for Organizers, the New Era Young Lords, and Guardian Rebellion.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Also, I'll just go ahead and read the 6 disciplinary rules, which is really basically universal and rule that in any organization formation we all need to adhere to, because it really coincides with our mission. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremities of self-defense. 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. So like you say, I really appreciate the unity statement because it really hit home, get to the point, and explain explicitly the reason for us being revolutionary and fighting for our people who's in a struggle.
Right.
So tonight, what we're going to do is start off by reading the foreword, as well as chapter 1, titled Ancestors, and then we will definitely get into the Q&A session. So we're going to start from page 1 to page 14. And also I want to acknowledge our participating audience that's here, besides myself and besides our sisters, Veronica and elder woman, Leslie Willis. We also have our IT man, In the background, Shamaka Nobles, and we have our brother Chad, and we have our brother Johnny Torres as well. So I thank y'all for joining us. And if there's anything y'all want to say at this time or add, here's your opportunity before we go and dig into this read. So would y'all like to introduce yourself as well?
Should I introduce myself first?
Huh?
Should I be the first one to introduce myself?
Sure, why not? Go right ahead, brother.
Well, my name is Chen Yeves. I'm an Attica brother. And that means that I was in a rebellion when it started and when it ended with the massacre of 40 some people. I've been in the struggle for many years. Since the age of 18, I've been struggling. I also, in the process, while being in prison, I was able to, with the help of the Black Panthers, I was able to form the first Young Law Party at Attica State Prison, as well as Greenhaven Prison. So it was two prisons that I formed the Young Law Party. And after that, the Young Law Party just took off.
Oh, that is good.
It just grew and grew and grew and grew. And the more it grew, the more I was oppressed, the more they oppressed me, the more that I was oppressed and thrown in segregation and abused and tortured, all that stuff. But all that was good as long as the Young Law Party grew. That's all that mattered. That's all that mattered.
It. Well, you know, I think.
And today, you know, I live in upstate New York, in Plattsburgh. It's close to the prison that I came home from.
What? Oh my goodness.
It's a long story. It's a long story. But
okay.
I'm not gonna get into it. But I live here now, at least for now, and it's cold.
I can imagine. I mean, in New York City, you have like all 5 seasons wrapped up in one day. If it's such as that in one day, I recall. And also, I want to mention to Brother Chad, he's from around my way, El Barrio, the coalition community of De Nueva York. So we neighbors, you could say, because
when I came home from prison, the first place that I entered, first place that I went was 110th Street and Lexington Avenue.
Look at that.
First place that I went to. Who I was looking for? I was looking for my Minister of Defense of the Young Law Party, who lived in the neighborhood. His name was G.I.
Oh
Pack.
my goodness.
And he passed away years ago. But
wow.
He's a good brother, and we hooked up and we organized and we worked together for a good while. And we did work with the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, you know, Jose what was his name? Carlos Feliciano and Mickey Melendez and Ricky Perez and Panama. We all worked together. You know, we did a lot of work together, you know. So I got a long history.
Wow, that's really impressive. And the comrades that our brother Chad had mentioned, they were the ones who did the New York City hospital takeover as well as the church. So
exactly.
Please
I wasn't
look at
in it.
the video.
I wasn't in it. I wasn't in it, but I was part of it.
Yeah, I remember that back in the days. Matter of fact, I had lived on 115 in Madison and Taft Project. So yes, my hat, I'll take off to you, brother, my neighbor, my neighbor brother. So I appreciate you joining us as well as
we put the Puerto Rican flag right on top of the forehead of the Statue of Liberty.
You sure did. Sure did. I thank you. I thank you so much. And we also have our brother Johnny Torres, who is curating one of our anthropology work, a cumulative work of many comrades in the movement, and I have to take my hat off to him. I don't know if he's available to speak, but
Yes,
he's
I
in the
am.
audience. Oh, good. So can you please tell us a little more, brother? There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, I can tell you a little bit more. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So it was after my first book, my poetry book, my editor, he just had an idea because he knew that I knew a lot of activists, a lot of people in different organizations like Brown Berets, Black Panthers, Young Lords. He was like, well, why don't you, you can make an anthology book with all of their work, all of their poetry or their origin stories and how they became the activists they are today. And I was thinking, like, you know what, that's actually a good idea because I know a lot of writers, and they're really good. And I know a lot of people who done a lot, accomplished a lot of things, and I know they would love to write about it and be a part of this. And then out of nowhere, the anthology book Voices of the Revolution came out, and it was a huge success. I got a lot of important people that were on there, and now I'm conducting volume 2, and there's just as important, a lot of important people. um, Aaron Dixon is on it. His father is on it. His father wrote a poem about Emmett Till, and it's never been published. So I asked him, I'm
Mm.
like, you think I can put that poem about your father, the one he wrote in there? He's like, yes, go ahead. So now it's both of them in it, So I thought that was, a really good thing to do. And there's a lot of other people, a lot of organizations that I'm part of, and I found out that there was writers and poets in there too, and I told them about the idea, and they loved it. And now it's like I got all these organizations that I'm part of, and they're all in it, so it's like one big or revolutionary family connected together, with all these minds and these words and accomplishments and hopes and dreams, all wrapped up into a book. It's just amazing how I watch everybody evolved after this and still evolving today. It really does make me happy to be part of this with a lot of people. Um, because we all grow at the same time when we put our minds together, and I feel like it was magic, uh and I got mostly everybody on here that's in the book club, um other brown berets that are in other revolutionary Zoom clubs or whatever. I got them too, so it's like I had to be in on these kinds of conversations on these Zooms to notice these people, and I had to go out of town to protest to hear and notice these people as well. So it's like none of this wasn't handed to me, this information. I actually had to go there and sought them out and introduce myself and tell them this great idea, and them being a part of it and how important it was. And the rest is history, and here we are today. Volume 2 is going to come out, and probably in the summer I'll be editing it, and making sure everything goes together. But it's like one of the best journeys and the best experience to get everybody together, and minds like ourselves, and make a book out of it, because we'll be gone in a 70, 80, 100 years by now, but the book and the revolutionary book will last forever. It'll always be there no matter what, and our souls will be in that book too, and so it'll be forever for everyone to see it. Your children, your grandkids will see that book, and they'll be like, damn, my family member was a part of something big, that no one can ever deny us, because it's there written in black and white. So that's what I wanted to accomplish, and I feel like it's already there.
I
Beautiful.
thank you. I thank you so much. Sister Leslie, you want to add something in?
Well, I'm 76, so I've had a long life so far and hope to go on You too, yay, the 76er Club. And when I was 16 years old, I got into the civil rights movement. I joined the Congress of Racial Equality, and I used to picket and, just kind of tear up the town with the protest. So I have a lot of history. I lived through all that stuff. I joined the Communist League when I was out in California, when I was in my early 20s. And my husband and we moved to West Virginia. So we did a lot of organizing there. I organized amongst poor people, really, welfare rights. And, we both of us came up here to Chicago and started working on the communist newspaper. At the time it was. And my husband's an artist and I would write. I was like the survival desk and all this.
Wow.
The struggles that would go on. I would call everybody who was involved and I would ask them a bunch of questions about their fight and what they were doing. And then I'd put it into a best article that I could, confined by 500 words.
Oh.
But, and we're still, both me and my husband, we just keep on going like the ever ready battery, the buddy that just keeps on going, right? But what we look at now, the most important thing we can do is talk to people, go out there and spread the knowledge that we're learning in these book groups. So everything we do today is for that end, because unlike yourselves, except maybe for Jay, there ain't going to be 80 years in front of us. If we get 10 years, we're going to be lucky. So it's very important now to pass the torches, get out there, tell everybody what you think you understand about the movement. Hopefully we can inform because we lived through a lot of stuff. So we're very aware of how treacherous the territory is, full of sabotage, full of betrayers, and yet I'm in a room full of good people. So there are wonderful people, really. It is the people, I call them the new class. They're the people that are rising from the ashes of a system that is on its way out. And this new class, we're the future. We are, and it's all been said in our statement of unity, but that's what we try to go out and do. So
that's it.
Thanks for indulging me.
Yes, and you're right, sister, because I have a beautiful art piece by her husband, Andy Conrad, Elder Andy Willis. I don't know if y'all can see it, but I will post a picture, and right here it even say we are not trying to save a dying system. We are fighting for a new world. And you see 3 icons. You got Sister Leslie, and you have 2 other great female comrades who are like the icon figures of the revolutionary movement. So I must thank Brother Annie for producing this well intended, well needed art masterpiece. And I have it, and I'm still indecisive whether to put it in a frame or just leave it right there on my refrigerator door, which I proudly display it because I love it. And I just read it, read the little caption and enjoy looking at it every day and showing it to my family member. And I want to thank our brother Johnny for putting in the work and making sure that, we will not be remiss for the work that we do. Communication is very important, and to record our life stories that give you an inside view of of what we face as comrades. It's not just about the struggle, but connected with like-minded people in furthering the mission that our legendary great have left behind for us to continue until the people are liberated from a oppressed society. So what we're gonna do is go forward with the read, get into the dig of it. It's not a long read, so we can have all take turns in reading. And also we're gonna conclude with the last 15, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes as far as answers and questions, and share our experience in relation to what we read. So starting off with the forward. Aaron Dixon has written an extraordinary book that is grounded in the ordinary. He tells the story of a boy's journey into adulthood. Born in the heartland of America, Dixon takes the readers on a trek that begins in Chicago, travel to Seattle, and take a detour to the Bay Area with stops in Texas before finally returning to the Pacific Northwest many years later. My People Are Rising is filled with heart-pounding stories and gripping accounts of Dixon's life, both as a civilian and as a member of the Black Panther Party in Seattle and the Bay Area. The product of a healthy two-parent home, Dixon experienced a supportive and loving home life of the type that many kids, regardless of race, long for. To understand how Dixon became the leader of the first chapter of the Black Panther Party outside of California, one must have an appreciation for the history of activism within the Dixon family. Dixon's father was an admirer, student, and follower of both Paul Robeson and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hence, neither Dixon's parents nor his friends were surprised when, as a teenager, he decided to join the Black Panther Party, even if Dixon surprised himself at times. He could not escape the fact that activism was in his gene pool. It was a part of who he was. Dixon's two younger brothers followed suit and also joined the party, making their commitment to the Black Panther Party a family affair. My People Are Rising is neither a tell-all work, not a sensational or a score-settling diatribe. Elements that have characterized a number of autobiographical accounts during the last 20 years or so, especially where the Black Panther Party is concerned. Nowhere in the book does Dixon denigrate or speak ill of anyone inside or out of the Black Panther Party. Instead, Dixon's book is a rich, down-to-earth story of his life, much of what chronicles the day-to-day goings on in the most widely known of the Black power groups and arguably the most effective Black revolutionary organization of the latter half of the 20th century. As a member of the Black Panther Party, Dixon spends the better part of his young adult life as a soldier on the front lines of the Black Power movement. The decision to do so, however, comes with great personal sacrifice. Dixon puts a human face on the many young people who, like him, left the secure confines of home, risked their life, and devoted themselves to the struggle for Black liberation. Dixon is particularly effective in enabling the readers to visualize the many women Panther who not only helped keep the party afloat, but also play an integral part in the Black Panthers Party's success. The book introduced us to a number of vivid characters and stand-up men and women who have heretofore not gotten much attention from previous writers, including Leon, quote, Valentine, and quote, Hobbs, one of the party's unsung heroes. I would especially encourage young people to read this book, as it provides a perfect illustration of the impact that young men and women made in Black communities throughout the country during the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. Dixon also paints a more complete portrait of the Black Panther Party than have most writers. The Black Panther Party consisted of more than just patrols of the police and the free breakfast for school children program. By discussing the Panthers' broad array of community-focused survival programs, Dixon provides the readers with an accurate and balanced depiction of the party's activities generally and in Seattle specifically. Dixon, a stand-up guy, has written a stand-up book about his life before, during, and after the Black Panthers Party. My People Are Rising deserve a broad hearing. This is a book that will, in fact, appeal to readers of all ages, regardless of their political persuasion or their opinions of the Black Panther Party, the most maligned and misrepresented organization of the 20th century. Jolson L. Jeffrey, PhD, professor of African American and African Study, the Ohio State University, and author of Huey P. Newton, The Radical Theorist, Comrades, A Local History of the Black Panther Party, and On the Ground, The Black Panther Party, and Communist, Across America. Anyone would like to take over the acknowledgement?
I don't have the book, so.
Any readers for the acknowledgement?
Well,
Okay.
I can do it. Okay, on August 27th, 1989, Huey P. Newton was gunned down on a lonely street in West Oakland, not far from one of the old national headquarters of the Black Panther Party. 3 days later, a memorial service for our embattled leader was held in Seattle. At the service, I was approached by Anna Johnson, the former owner of Open Hand Publishing. She asked me if I would be interested in writing a book about my experience in the party. And thus began a journey of more than 2 decades as I attempted to tell my story and the stories of so many others regarding one of the most significant, most intriguing, and brightest moments in modern American history. Writing this memoir has not been an easy task for a single parent suffering from some form of undiagnosed PTSD, raising not only my own kids, but also the kids of others, because the traditional family system has collapsed. It took a lot of support and encouragement, at times seemingly an entire village, to bring this project to completion. So I must acknowledge and thank all those who have helped along the way. During the earlier years, a number of people helped the manuscript get off the ground. My first typist was from Pike Place Typing Service, which kindly provided discounted typing service. And later my friend Pam, who worked for the city of Seattle, donated her time to typing my handwritten pages. My good friend, Virginia Wyman, stepped up to provide valuable assistance and support. Dean Patton worked with me as a writing coach. Deborah Green, the widow of Dr. John Green, volunteered her time to edit the first draft of the manuscript. And I am thankful to my good friend Gilda Shepherd, faculty at Evergreen Tacoma, for reminding me that I had a lot to say. I thank all my Panther comrades. If not named directly here in these acknowledgements, my gratitude and love for my Panther comrades are in the pages of this memoir. Bill Jennings of the website It's About Time BPP fielded my constant questions and gave me ongoing reminders to finish this book. Bobby Seale had long phone conversations with me discussing details. Emery Douglas provided steady encouragement, as did Leila McDowell. My good friend Valentine Hobbs and I had daily conversations about our years in the party. I am amazed how the memories of those days are fresh in our minds. I'd also like to thank original BSU members, Larry Gossett and Gary Owens, who have become my closest friends over the years. I want to express my appreciation to Anthony Arnove and Haymarket Press for recognizing the importance and value of My People Are Rising. I could not have asked for a better editor in Caroline Left, who seemed to know about everything from football to music to politics. Her patience and commitment to the project were invaluable. I thank my family for always being available for information as well as inspiration. My mother allowed me to call her day and night to ask her questions, at times redundant, about our family history and her memories of the turbulent years of the 60s and 70s. My brothers Elmer and Michael and my sister Joanne provided ever-present support. My cousin Mark shared so much valuable information about my father's side of the family. I thank my children, Erin Patrice, Nisa, Lakita, Venetia, Aziza, Asha, and Zane for their joyous curiosity about their dad's writing a book and for their love and strength. Also in my heart are my grandkids, Fela, Ayana, Grace, Natasha, Dazia, Serena, Miko, and Talia, and my great-grandchildren, twins, Zamaria and Xavier, for the hope and peace they bring into the world of uncertainty. And the one person who, above all, helped me and cajoled me in making this book worthy of publication is my partner, Farah Naushin. For the past 7 years, we have worked together on this project as if it were one, as if we were one, even while she was immersed in completing her BA and master's degrees and in post 9/11 activism in the South Asian community. Lastly, and very importantly, I express my utmost gratitude to all my friends, comrades, and the people of Seattle, especially those who kept on asking me year after year, "Hey, Erin, when's your book coming out?" At last, I have an answer. And do you want me to go on, or does somebody else want to read? Oh, Sister Anna, you're on mute. Che, were you going to read?
No, I don't have the book, so.
Okay.
Okay, if you
can
want to
read.
read.
Yeah, Johnny can read, he says.
Oh, good. Thank you, Johnny.
So we're on Ancestors, chapter 1, right?
Right. And that's after our family journey began. And for those who doesn't have the book, here's a picture. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see it, of Dixon. I know it's kind of blurry. I can't blur my scenery. So thank you, Sister Leslie, for posting that. And underneath, I just want to just mention the Dixon family back row, left to right is his mother, his father. Joanne is the front row. Left to the right is our brother Aaron Dixon, Michael, Irma, Chicago summer 1964. So that's a picture of his family right there in his younger years. All right, brother, if you want to go ahead and begin with ancestors, and if you want to read all the way to my son, which is on page number 9, that would be great.
Okay. On a hot, muggy night during the treacherous or tremendous and wild summer of 1968, I crouched and awaiting along with 3 comrades, clenching my carbine tightly with sweaty hands. We were silently waiting for our prey. No, this was not Vietnam, it was Seattle. The riots have raged for 3 nights, much like the other rebellions that scorched across America that summer, from Newark to Chicago to Los Angeles. These rebellions would leave hundreds of people dead, wounded, and imprisoned, as well as endless blocks of burned out, raged, raged buildings standing as a lasting memory of the anger of Black America. I did not know, nor did I care whenever I would survive that night, or for that matter, the many other nights we took to the streets to seek our revenge. I was only a few months earlier that Martin Luther King Jr. has been assassinated, and just a few years since the assassination of Malcolm X and Medgar Evers. These deaths were still fresh in our minds and our hearts, as were the countless deaths and of the lesser known victims of America racism. For more than 300 years, Black people in America have been denied basic civil rights, first when they were ripped from their African homelands and sold into slavery in the New World, then after emancipation. How you pronounce that?
Emancipation.
Okay, I
Yeah,
guess I
you
had it.
have it right.
Okay,
Yeah.
emancipation under the racist system of Jim Crow laws and segregation, the uprising of the 60s, exploring, erupting the volcanic forest throughout Black America sent a loud and clear signal that the time of silence and complicity
See? Mhm.
was at the end. Taking up arms against the racist power structure was a powerful move towards liberating our streets, our cities, our communities, not only the Black America in our time, but also those who had come before and those who would follow. Thus, my story and the stories of so many others began not in 1968, but hundreds of years earlier, when the first Black slaves set foot on the sacred land of the red man. Yes, the ashes of our ancestors are long gone, and memories of them have long since displaced,
Dissipated.
dissipated. Yet their struggles, their strength, their courage, and their wisdom, along with their falling failings and flaws, will always be with us, pushing us, encouraging us, and watching over us as we navigate our own way through the life ahead. For most of us, those ancestors were dragged ashore, shackled, bewildered, and despairing. It is difficult to tell where our stories begin or end. I know very little of my slave ancestry, and even less about
Mariah.
Mariah, Mariah, a small bow-legged black slave woman in Durant, Mississippi, where she lived, toiled, and died thousands of miles away from the ancestral homeland. In 1858, under the old slave laws that did not legally recognize marriage between enslaved people and married Frank crimes, a
Criminals.
half criminals, a half Irish and half black
Mulatto.
mulatto
Mulatto.
man, as described by the
Census.
census. They officially remarried after emancipation. Mississippi, like most southern states, was an hospital
Inhospitable.
inhospitable place for most newly freed slaves. Many remained in bondage or worked in internal
Indentured.
indentured
Uh-huh.
servants under the Black Codes laws enhanced after emancipation by the southern states to restrict the rights of Black people, keeping them from keeping them in servitude. Those developments were to come with the region of terror under Jim Crow laws starting the 1870s, which included mandatory segregation, the elimination of the rights to vote and to bear arms, forced imprisonment, and hideous acts of lynching. My material great grandmother, Emma, one of the Mariah's four daughters, was born August 9th, August 2nd, 1868, 3 years after the end of the Civil War. Emma grew up in a small house and under the watchful eye of Mariah, now a free woman, free to raise her five children according to her own will. When I was a little boy, Emma would tell us stories of her childhood, such as how her mother would sit on the porch, keep an eagle eye on her children as she instructed them in the art of doing laundry. Emma also told us how, when she was a young child, the local Cherokees attempted to kidnap her, thinking she was one of their own because of her long black hair. Emma left home at 18 to marry Mr. Joseph I, who worked as a brakeman for the railroad. Emma worked as a laundress, one of the few occupations available to Black women during the 1800s in Mississippi. In the early 1900s, her husband died a tragic death on the job in a railroad accident. Emma went to live a very long life, surviving urinary,
Uterine,
urinary,
uterine cancer.
urinary cancer, and she gave birth to 8 children, only 4 of whom lived beyond childhood. One of Emma's surviving girls was Mabel, my great grandmother, who, according to many, was very beautiful. Mabel did the unthinkable. She had an affair and became pregnant by a German Jewish man, Mr. John William Brown. This affair and pregnancy led to her being ostracized from her family and community and resulted in the birth of a daughter, Willie Joe, my grandmother, named after her father. Later, she was raised as Josephine. Mabel departed and world far too early at the age of 23, dying of constipation,
Consumption. Mhm.
consumption, the earlier name of tuberculosis. Josephine was only 3 years old when her grandmother Emma took her. In fact, that Josephine looked more white than anything else presented problems for her grandmother. Southern social rules of the time decreed that a child who appeared to be white should not be seen in the company of
An adult? Is he an adult?
I just lost my place. As an
Okay.
adult, as an
Uh,
adult who was obviously black. Soon the decision was made by Josephine would go live with one of her mother's sisters, Aunt Marie's, in Chicago, where racial rules were slightly less reservative,
Restricted.
restricted.
restrictive. Aunt Marie's husband, Uncle Milton, had graduated from Lane College, a boarding school in Tennessee. He was employed with the post office. They lived with three kids in a big Victorian house on a large plot of land of Chicago's far south side, where they grew much of their own food and ran a family ice cream parlor. My grandmother often talked about working long hours in the ice cream parlor and performing many other chores while the other kids played. There was one thing my grandmother wished more than anything else, and that was to be able to take piano lessons just like Aunt Marie's kids did. But she was denied that opportunity, something my grandmother would never forget. Her unhappy stay with Aunt Marie added to the anger and confusion she already felt. Although Aunt Marie herself was mixed, she could never really accept her sister's half white daughter when Josephine turned 12 and her grandmother Emma made the long train trip up from Mississippi to Chicago and took Marie back to Durham and eventually spent her way to boarding school. Black boarding schools were a saving grace for the Black families who could afford to send their other kids away to be educated and prepared to enter the segregated US society. Boarding school was a place to meet others and build, what is that?
Camaraderie.
Camaraderie. Um,
Camaraderie. It's like
camaraderie.
get together. Hmm.
Okay, gotcha. During the remaining years of youth, that is where Josephine met my grandmother, Joy Slade. Roy
Hmm.
Slade, a dapper, handsome young man. It is said that Roy's family's history in America begins with the story of an African princess enslaved and brought to the shores of the New World, who eventually married a Cherokee chief. Roy's father, Cyrus Slade, Slade, Slade,
Hmm.
uh,
Sled.
Sled
Hmm. Like the
was
sled
the
twister.
okay.
Hmm.
Sled was the only black blacksmith who miles around in Como, Mississippi, and was often seen riding with his white horse throughout the countryside. Although Roy had only one suit, he carried himself as if he owned a whole closet full. It wasn't long enough before Josephine strong-willed it and Roy. Mellow
Mellow.
and mellow and calm, married, and Josephine gave birth to her mother, Frances Emma Slade. And in 1925, they soon joined more than million of other Black Americans in the Great Migration to the north of the 1900s, looking for more opportunity and freedom than what they had experienced in the Jim Crow South. Roy found more work, found work in Chicago as a railroad potter porter, and Josephine, who passed as white, took barely of jobs before finding permanent work as a waitress in a restaurant, where she eventually retired after 34 years, it is interesting to note that the entire time Josephine worked there, neither her customers nor employees had any liking that she was of mixed race. This was a common practice among Blacks light enough to pass. Roy and Josephine struggled at times, even separating on numerous occasions. Roy's personal battle with alcohol caused him to lose his job with the railroad. Josephine had to move to St. Paul and back to Chicago before Roy, at 32, was able to get a handle of his drinking and reunite with his family. With assistance from Josephine's uncle Milton, Roy landed a much coveted job at the post office where he worked until retirement. His tools of maintaining his sobriety were the Bible and the Christian Science Monitor, which he read diligently. Did I say that right?
Diligently.
Huh.
The
Okay.
one, uh-huh. Go ahead, brother.
In silence, every day after work, Josephine was determined that her daughter would have the best of whatever she could provide, sending her to the best schools, starting her on the piano at age 5, and finding the best piano instructors at age 7. Frances was acknowledged as a child prodigy and began giving recitals and concerts in Milwaukee and Chicago. Josephine was relentless in her desire for her daughter to become an accomplished pianist. Since the opportunity had been denied her, she would often set straight those white teachers who tried to rebuff her and teaching her brown child. My mother graduated from high school at 15. After graduation, she refused to go any further on the piano. 10 years of having her knuckles swatted with rulers and stern teachers and many hours practice had pushed her to the point of no return. She was longer interested in being a serious pianist. She tried modeling for a while and enrolled in Hal- Hallam, Hamlin, Hamlin University in St. Paul before eventually settling into studies at Chicago Teachers College in 1944. In 1943, my father was crosstown preparing to graduate from Inglewood High School. Elmer Dixon Jr. was born in 1924 in Henderson, Kentucky. To Elmer and Mildred Dixon, their family also joined the Great Migration to North, landing in Chicago in the mid 1920s. Despite Chicago's own from of segregation and racist practices, Chicago and northern cities will provide a launching pad for the coming Black middle class. My potential pet-
Paternal
paternal
grandmother.
grandmother, Mildred West, was one of the many grandchildren of Amanda Brooks, an enslaved woman whose father was the slave master of the Ermit, Armit,
Hmm.
Ermit,
Hmm.
Armit plantation in Henderson, Kentucky. Mildred's family traveled a different road out of slavery than did my mother's family. Where the Civil War broke out, Mildred's grandfather, Richard Brooks, and her great uncle escaped the plantation to join the Union Army, becoming some of the first slaves to join the Union forces after the war ended. The slave master and his family abandoned the plantation and headed to Colorado. Mildred's grandfather and granduncle each received a government's
A
aller-
lot.
aller-
A
allotment
lot.
allotment for
Yeah.
having fought in the war, combining combining what is that word?
Combined.
Combining
Mhm.
that with the slave master's land, which Amanda Brooks introverted, the families founded their own town and gave it to the family's name, Brookstown. As a young boy in Chicago, I always marveled at the grandmother's oak dressers with marble tops, the two leather rocking chairs, and the other fine antiques in the house. Many years later, she would tell me that those items once had belonged to her family family slave master. My grandmother Dee Dee, as she was known, always talked so proudly of her family and their history. She once told me that her grandmother had her thumb chopped off for refusing the advances of a slave master, but Dee Dee was always happy and carefree.
Wow.
Yeah, that's something, isn't it? She did
Mm.
not appear to have suffered any of the effects of the slave legacy that I saw in my mother's family. The only time I saw a hint of sadness in her eyes was when she talked about her brother Clifton, whom she described as a very handsome and demure, a star
Zephaniah.
athlete. Oh,
Mhm.
Stephanie.
You could.
Okay, a star athlete, a college bound until he was killed in the tragic car accident. Dee Dee's husband, Elmer First, was a large, strong man with big olive eyes and a heart of gold. Little is known about his family. When he just was an infant, Elmer's father left Kentucky and landed for St. Louis, where he became one of the nation's few black millionaires. But he
Mm.
never acknowledged his son, creating a tremendous void in my grandfather's life, as well as
Right.
depriving
Mhm.
our family of any connection to the Dixon name and history. Dee Dee located her husband's father, and wrote to him on the numerous occasions with the hope that he would come forth to acknowledge his son, but he never responded. So my grandfather took the deep pain of rejection and pushed it deep down, putting all his energy into his own family. He found work in Chicago with a wealthy Jewish family and did well enough that his wife never needed to work outside the home. She devoted her time to raising her son Elmer Jr. and his older sister Dolores. Doris? Yeah, Doris. Dee Dee also became a leader in the community and co-founded the Woodlawn organization, which would have a long, rich history of community building in Chicago. When he wasn't spoiling her father and his sister, she hosted bridge and tea parties with friends and often spent time writing poetry. Okay. My father grew up in a prosperous family and the community cocoon of Chicago's South Side, playing football with his good friend Buddy Young, one of the first great black college football players to come out of Chicago. My father's artistic artistic
Artistic talent.
artistic talent led him to find taking classes at the Art Institute of Chicago and eventually received a scholarship to the institute and most prestigious
Mhm.
art art school in the country, but college would have to wait. One afternoon, my father, captain of the Inglewood High School ROTC, was sitting in the was sitting with his buddies in the regional theater. He and his three best friends, fellow ROTC classmates, were known as the Four Feathers. After the title of the 1939 movie, as they sat watching the newsreel before the movie on a screen footage of atrocities committed by
Mhm.
the Japanese against US soldiers. At the newsreel confusion, he and his friends jumped up and ran down the Navy recruitment center as the Navy was my father's first choice with autism. He told the naval officer on duty that he wanted to enlist then and there. The white officer shot back, "We don't take boys like you."
Mm.
Okay. Oh, my father was shocked, angered and greatly disappointed. It was a rejection he would not forget. A Just months later on that day, he graduated high school. He received his draft notice. My grandfather escorted his only son down to the induction
Induction center.
center. A large man, my grandfather dwarfed his son as he prepared to hand him over to the unknown. Neither of them had any idea what the trials ahead would present. My grandmother could not bear for her son to leave. She was a doting mother, and her son and daughter meant the world to her. She told me that when her son left to go to war, she let loose a sound of anguish so deep and so pained that it could be heard by many of the neighbors. The thought of her little boy, now a man, going off to war and facing impossible death was almost too much for her to bear. But he was determined to go. Finally, resigned to the fact that her son had gone, she penned and the following poem published in a local paper in 1943.
Thank you, brother. To my son, oh, how I miss you, my son, and the tricks you play in fun. I miss uh your loud laughter and tremble. I'm sorry, the lighting is crazy here. Trumbull room and year constant juggling of the kitchen broom. How I miss your begging for pie and saying in fun that for sweets you will die. I miss the gang who would come in the door just as you started to scrub the floor. There are many things I miss since you went away, and I wandered through the house, the quiet house in day, praying to him who is above to send back to me the son I love. As boot camp in Kentucky, my father and his friends were assigned to the famous 7th Cavalry, a fact that made him very proud. In preparation for war, they learned about weapons and proper us in discharging them, as well as techniques of hand-to-hand combat. They was also whipped into top physical shape, running and marching in the Kentucky countryside where my father was bitten by a rattlesnake while marching in the field. He also experienced constant hurry, gulling from some brothers about his light brown complexion. After boot camp, the green recruit was ready to confront the enemy, but they will soon find out that the enemy was not the one they expected. The young, exuberant Black soldiers was loaded into a train with the window covered and issue helmets with the letter, quote, M, in a quote painted on them. The recruits thought the M meant that they were shipped out to Michigan or maybe Minnesota. They had no idea that their destination was Mississippi. My dad had never been south of Kentucky, let alone as far as Mississippi. The legacy of slavery in the South was still intact in 1943. My father and his friends had heard the stories of lynching and brutality against Blacks and of the segregation that was far worse than in Chicago. But for a wide-eyed young man, none of these things matter, or maybe they sounded too extreme to be true. He and the others had no ideas that shock and danger awaited them in the deep South. The segregated South and the segregated United States Army presented serious problems for Black soldiers. On the Army base, they were treated with disdain. Off the base, their life were often in danger. The mere sight of a Black man in uniform could often be enough to incite violence from whites. There were three main incidents in Mississippi that reshaped my father's understanding of his country and what it meant to be Black in America. The first trial took place on a dusty road as Black soldiers marched in formation, carrying their packs and unloaded weapons, led by their white officers. They had been marching for hours in a hot, humid southern sun, fighting off the aggravating mosquitoes, sweat running down their brown faces, marching across cotton fields where Black slaves had once toiled in the heat of the day for the white master. Finally, they came in a large field with a faded red barn. Standing there to greet them was a white man in dangling overalls holding a double-barrel shotgun. Quote, I'm not going to say the word, "You ninja, stop right there," end of quote, he barked out. The commanding officer put up his right hand slightly for his tired troop to halt. He replied, quote, "Sir, my men and I need to march across your field so we can avoid the swamp," end of quote. The white man's face remained motionless. As far as he was concerned, these niggers should still be in chain, heads bowed, shuffling along, pointing his shotgun as the man, as he spoke. He said, end quote, "Ain't no ninja gonna march across my field," end of quote. The words came out of his mouth, finite and resolute. In other circumstances, most of the Chicago men would have rushed the gut-tooting white man. They had been in their share of racial brawls in Chicago, but this was not the time or the place to fight back. And even though the white man was outnumbered, there was no doubt among the men or the officers that he could use his weapon. At the officer's command, they exhorted the men turn around and march into the swamp. Later that evening, the men set up camp, ate their rations, and bedded down. Once the white officers were asleep, my father had a group of his friends back to the farmer's land and torched his field and the red barn. It is difficult for me to imagine what was going through my father's mind or the minds of his fellow conspirators. For young Black men from Chicago to commit such an act in the heartland of Jim Crow America in 1943 represented either sheer insanity or tremendous defiance. The second incident occurred while my father was on furlough in a local town not far from the base. He had met a pretty young Black woman who was very light-skinned and probably passed for white on occasion. And when he meant pass, that means, she's able to look like she's white, but she's really Black. So you'll find a number of people calling or stating, oh, she's passing. She passed for white. So continuing, they had spent the day at the edge of town enjoying the sunny weather and each other's company. As any young couple on a first night, for the first date might do. An evening approached, the young lady announced that it was getting late and she had better get home before dark. My father responded, quote, "I'll walk you home," in a quote. His friend began to get anxious and nervously replied, quote, "Oh, I think you better not do that," in a quote. I kind of figure where this is going. But my father, being a true Chicago boy, brought up to respect tradition and the old-fashioned cultural values of honor and chivalry, persisted. Back home in Chicago, the proper thing to do was to escort your date home. Even though the young woman protested that he could not walk her home, my father insisted on continuing with his escort, obviously to the line he was crossing. They sat out on the walk across town, which took them out in public. My father was dressed smartly in his uniform, but tilted to the side, smiling a happy-go-lucky grin as he often did. His young female companion was nervous and doubtful. First, it was the threatening stares and the whispering from passerby. And then there on the sidewalk stood the town sheriff. His red neck almost bursted through the stained collar of a brown shirt and his stomach bulging over the belt that held his service revolver. The sheriff wasn't quite sure what he saw. He had seen these Niger soldiers all spruced up in their brown uniforms and had put many of them in their place. And maybe he'd done more than that. But now this Niger appeared to be walking with a white girl. He looked my father in the face and said, quote, "Niger, when I come back here, you better be gone," end of quote. My father continued walking with his date. They just happened to be passing the post office, so he and his date went inside. He wrote a postcard to his mother describing the danger he was in and what had been happening to him and his fellow Black soldiers in the Deep South. He asked for a stamped and mailed the postcard. Then he continued across town with his date, walking toward her home. He made it back to the base unharmed, but was shaken by what had occurred. When his mother received the postcard, she wrote to Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of the president, telling Miss Roosevelt about her son's dire situation and that of the other Black soldiers on the Army base. Sometime later came the third incident. On a Sunday morning, my father and the other Black soldier were preparing to go on furlough when orders came that their furlough had been canceled. Instead, they were ordered to clean the latrine in the white soldiers' barracks. This was the last straw. All the incidents since they had been in the Deep South came to a head and exploded on that Sunday. Anger and rage and defiance all collided and ignited as the Black soldier broke out in rebellion. They smashed up the furniture, beds, and everything else from the barracks they could propel out into the yard. They lit fires and refused all orders to disperse. The rebellion continued for almost 3 days. Finally, a train pulled into the camp and all the Black soldiers from that Mississippi base were taken out of the South. My grandmother always believed that Eleanor Roosevelt had played a role in relocating the Black soldiers and delivering her son to safety. After stops for further training at Fort Lewis in Washington State and at Pearl Harbor, my father and his friends stepped aboard an amphibious craft in the Pacific, clenching a weapon, preparing to storm the beach. They fought fearless battle in Luzon, Philippines, and Okinawa, Japan, facing young 18 and 19-year-old Japanese soldiers who were encountering the onslaught of the U.S. Army, newly rebuilt and expanded following the attack on Pearl Harbor. For the young Japanese soldier, it was their last stand, a fight of desperation, which made for extremely tough adversity. The battles was brutal. Many men perished on both sides. My father remembers that after one battle, he found himself standing, blood splatter all over him, bodies of the enemies scattered about, and only a handful of his comrades still alive, including the 2 brothers who had harassed him in boot camp, trembling in fear in the trench. He also told me a story about patrolling through the jungle and coming face to face with a Japanese soldier. For a split second, they looked at each other before my father was able to get off the first shot. He then rushed to the side of the young Japanese soldier, pulled out his first aid kit, and patched up the bullet wound as much as he could. He located the young soldier wallet and opened it. Inside was a picture of the soldier with his wife and child, which my father let the soldier look at. My father comforted him and gave him water from his canteen before leaving his side. In Okinawa, my father witnessed something that would change him forever and almost cost him his life. After a fierce battle, doing the mop up, he saw a U.S. Marine cut off a breast of a dead Japanese woman and hold it up in his bayonet. This barbaric act incited such rage in my father that he raised his machine gun and prepared to fire on the white Marine, but his comrade stopped him. He had witnessed a lot of bloodshed by soldiers on both sides, but in no way did he expect to witness such inhumane cruelty towards civilians. Because of this incident, he went AWOL in South Korea, where Japanese families had also fled. He spent time with a Japanese family after meeting a young Japanese woman named Miyoka, eventually returning to his post in order to avoid court-martial. Finally, the war was over and my father returned home, bringing with him the spoils of war. 2 samurai swords, a 7.62 sniper rifle, much prized Japanese machine pistol, a Filipino balo knife, several Japanese kimonos, and a picture of him and Mayoka. These few weeks at home, he said very little or nothing about his experience until one evening at dinner, his mother asked him, quote, "Well, son, what happened over there?" End of quote. With that, all of the motion has been holding back from Mississippi to Okinawa, came flooding in, and he began to tell his many stories. At last, he was able to put the nightmares behind him, and he united with his Chicago friends, going out to parties, dancing and drinking at the city's great ballrooms. Built in the 1920s, he joined Paul Robeson Progressive Party and began attending their meetings. He also started school at the Art Institute of Chicago. One evening at a party, he was introduced to a young girl named Frances, my mother, and it was not long before they agreed to begin a family journey together. So that concludes our chapter, the first chapter of My People Are Rising, where he gave a complete view of his family members, which the chapter is called Ancestors. And in his chapter, he spoke on a number of things which still remains as an issue in our society. And that is one, he talked about, of course, racism. He talked about the brutality of the South, where to be Black is a crime. And to date someone who's of a lighter skin tone has two cross swords to it. One, in the Black community, we call anyone that is lighter than a brown paper bag is passing, where they look white, but we know they are Black. And some people of color will find those individuals are too good, and they try to hide their identity. And then again, for someone who were passing, it pretty much has saved their lives. And it has saved the lives of others. And I don't know if a number of you have seen the movie about Harriet Tubman, which of course is more Hollywood than everything. There was one of the former slaves or slaves who was about to become free. She pretended she was a white woman, and she saved a lot of those runaway slaves who was hitting right there in a wagon with all these objects on top of them so they would not be captured by slave hunters. And also, if you look at colorism, again, you are able to portray or look like you're white with a tan, and that give you the opportunity to find employment, to interact with a number of white people, where at the time of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, during the Jim Crow period, that was unacceptable, as what our brother Aaron Dixon had described when his father had escorted his date home. Also, he talked about briefly about his ancestors, his parents going to a boarding school. And I remember my father and mother went to a boarding school, and that is to escape the situation where they were faced back at home, where my father was an orphan, and his aunt and cousin put their money together to send my father out of 3 siblings to a boarding school, and he was the only male. And my mother, who lived in Harlem, known around that area as Sugar Hill, was infested with heroin cocaine. And my grandmother and my aunt, seeing how that whole community was ravaged by such drug as myself growing up in East Harlem and seeing how crack cocaine have ravaged my area. So to prevent my aunt and my grandmother felt to prevent my mother and my aunt from being exposed to that type of environment, they quickly moved them out of living in Harlem to living at a boarding school, where they both continue their education in Lexington, Mississippi. So everything that Brother Dixon was describing in his introduction chapter is pretty much exactly the same experience what my mother and my father had went through in their education, being away from their city, from their neighborhood. And moving from the North, living to the South is like a new breed. It's like a new culture. I've seen it personally as a shock, because I had ended up living in Mississippi for over a year. First, it was very difficult to understand the diction, the language, because of their accent, and they had a hard time understanding what I was saying. And on top of that, the climate was so different because it was so hot down there until you could see heat rise up from the ground, like if it was smoke.
Mhm.
And then you have to look also, going back to the dating of someone who's light skinned. People wasn't very receptive to that. And of course, I experienced that, when I had to go to town to get some medication for my daughter who was sick with a cold. And I remember my husband had to, work. So he asked one of his classmates if her husband can drive me and my daughter to town to pick up my daughter medicine. And her husband happened to look like Opie from the Annie Griffin show. And I remember when we went to town, we got all these steers until we had like 3 cars to follow us right back to our location. And that was the most terrified point in my life in living in Mississippi, because these 3 cars that was following us was in an area not too far away from those 3 freedom fighters who ended up being killed and thrown in the swamp. So, it was a very scary experience for myself. And it really paramountted the situation when, the guy who was driving us in town, I call him Opie because he really looked like Opie from the Annie Griffin show. And we call him Red as a nickname, was telling me, do you got some tinfoil? And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I'm like, tinfoil? What the world is that? And he said, tinfoil, aluminum foil. And I say, no. He said, oh man, because my car is about to conk out. And I told him, honey, I don't know what you better do, but you better put your foot to the pedal and you better halt your ass where we need to go. Because those cars was really speeding up behind us. And they saw us when we was shopping around and getting my daughter medication. And to go back a little more, before we were followed back to our location, I remember Red said, and I don't know if you ever been to the black side of town, but he took me over there and I told him, yeah, very interesting. And when I got there, I had my daughter in my arm because, she had a runny nose or whatever. She had a cold. And to see like half of the whole town looking at me because I was with someone white, they had lowered their heads. And I recall seeing them living in these log cabin type of setting, like on a pancake box. And to see poverty has shocked me. And I try to wave and say hi to them. And nobody said anything. No one raised their raised their eyes. They all looked down. And that's when I had turned to Red and I said, Red, I think we ready to go. And it looked like it was a look of fear, a look of not so much embarrassment, but fear and obedience. And it was like one of those moments that I would never forget from my experience living in the South in dirt. I call it dirt land. But it just bring me back to that time. And I'm sure that my mother and my father have not gotten used to the culture down there from living in New York as being known and seen as city slickers, from my dad living in Chicago, my mother living in New York City, and I have to face racism the way they did. And I know my mother got in trouble per se by cursing out a number of people, and miraculously she remained alive because she could have been hung. But she got so many complaints from the town that they did not even want my mother down there. They they kind of threatened the school, which was a Christian school for Black students to attend. They wanted my mother to go back wherever she came from. And my father was even a far worse hellraiser from Chicago. So those are the little things that, that brought me to a point of I could never see myself living in the South.
Yeah.
of what I experienced and what I seen. Beautiful place, but it's a place that I knew I could not live or I would not survive as a young Black woman down there.
So sister,
Yes.
Sister Anna, um, Miss Catherine's come on from the archive, and I think that she was in contact with Brother Aaron, and he did not know about the call, and she is asking who is or was supposed to contact him. Catherine, are you still here?
She just has a picture up.
She messaged in the chat.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, she
Okay.
did.
Well, Brother Kwame had mentioned that Aaron Dixon will come on and give us a little more insight about his book. It wasn't a specific date or time. I had sent him a text to see if he's interested in coming on tonight. So as far as the interaction between Brother Kwame and Aaron Dixon was a conversation prior to us reading his book. So whenever, Aaron Dixon would like to come on and elaborate on his book, we are reading it. And so far, I am taken away by it, and I cannot wait to have a one-to-one discussion with him. So I don't know if he's supposed to come on tonight or not, but I was checking to see if he wanted to come on, and if he did, to make sure that he contact the right person, which is you, Shamago, to come on in or find some way or some means to get our links so he could join in our conversation about his book.
Can we go on with the discussion? I wanted to say something.
Yes,
Oh,
please,
go
sister.
right ahead, sis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, this is gonna go on for a while, so we'll have,
Yes.
maybe we can look into it afterwards to see how we can line it up. Anyway, what was in the book and what you were saying, Sister Anna, I don't know. I don't think I told you guys about this experience, but when I was, I was probably too old to be doing it, but 21 or so, I hitchhiked with this guy across the country, and we went through the South. And the only people who would pick us up were, for the most part, like in Mississippi, were really poor Black people. And I think looking back on it, I thought, well, they were just kind and realized if we were standing beside the road, we must need a ride, and they were going to help us. But I think now looking back at it, they probably were a little bit afraid not to pick us up, like they were expected or something to pick us up. But anyway, what happened was that we got this ride from two Black guys driving a truck. This was coming above, north of Jackson, Mississippi, coming down through marshland into Jackson at night. And they were drunk. But maybe that's the reason they picked us up. But they had a bottle of whiskey under the seat, and they were really drunk. They were going to Jackson. And they took us on some detours, like to a juke joint. I mean, it was quite fun, really. But then we got back on the road and we stopped for gas at a gas station. And it was especially me being a white woman and a white kid, we were young, and two old Black guys. These white guys came out, you know what I'm going to say, huh? Yeah, because you lived there. These four white guys came out of this gas station, And they said, you see that road, you get on it. And so
Wow.
we hustled ourselves into this truck and we took off. And like I said, they were weaving and everything, but there was nobody out there. Nobody, no cars. It was the middle of the goddamn night. We came into this marsh. It was total blackness, no lights. Cop pulled us over. These blue lights, you know, going in the marsh, pulled us over. We all got to get out of the truck. And he started talking to, you know, just really roughing them up. Not too bad, but he shoved them into the car, was going to take them to jail. And then he said to me and Larry, this guy I was with, he said, I usually beat the shit out of people like you, but I'm going to leave you out here in the marsh. And then he started pointing to the place. You know, there was this woman, she was raped over there. And there was people over here, they were killed on that tree. And he took off with them in the car to the jail. And we were standing in the middle of this march, waiting on these white guys from the gas station. That's what I thought was coming, right? And we were terrorized. We didn't know what to do. Well, the cops had left their truck out there. So the tow truck came. And honey, we got on our knees to that man. We said, please, please take us out of here because somebody's going to kill us. And he didn't want to do it. He was afraid too. He's a white guy. He's afraid of them too. But he said, okay, get in. And we got in that tow truck and he took us on into Jackson and he dropped us off at the road. And we were standing there on this bridge. Well, at first we went into this gas station. It was a little black-owned gas station. And we started telling these guys about what happened to us. And, you know, they were just shaking their head, listening to us. And so then pretty soon we had to take off. So we went back to the road to try to get a ride. And we were standing there and people were throwing bottles at us and cursing at us. I mean, we were hippies, right? I mean, I had long hair. The guy had long hair, right? And so we were considered a real threat from the north, kind of a thing, right? But anyway, finally I turned around, people were throwing bottles at me and I'm standing on this bridge and I just said, I don't know what to do because I feel like we're not going to get out of here, out of Jackson, Mississippi alive. And up drove the car from the gas station. These guys had listened to us and they come up, parked on the curb and they said, get in and get down. And we got into the back seat of their car and got down so our heads would not show. And they took us to the outskirts of Jackson where there was like this country kind of, you know, cafe where white people, poor white people going in and out. And they said, you should be okay here. You'll get a ride here. And they took off. But that was my lesson because I like I said, I'd been in the civil rights movement up in the, we marched together. We fought together up there, you know, and my parents were totally behind what I was doing. So it was a shock to me. I knew it was bad. I wouldn't have been in the civil rights movement, but it was a shock to me to see how obsessed, like you were saying, just totally obsessed, white, black, whatever, you know, just like crazy with it. Like the examples he gives here in the book, a black woman could not walk with a whiter or lighter skinned child. A black guy could not escort his date home because she was too light skinned. I mean, you know what this says to me? They were so afraid of this thing just crashing and burning. Because why would you employ these methods of terrorism if you were not petrified at how fragile this thing was? Anyway, I haven't shared that story in a long time, but there's actually a whole other part to it that
Yeah,
if you want to hear the end, the best part of it,
go ahead, sis.
we went back to California, which is where we were from. And I got this job, and we both started working in this hospital. And it was like a huge institution, for they called it mental retardation in those days. So I'm not being politically incorrect, but that's what it was called. And my boyfriend was working in the laundry, and he went outside to smoke during a break, and this black guy came out and started smoking with him. And Larry started telling the guy about this trip through the South. And the guy said, I know, don't you remember how you got in my car and I gave you potato chips to eat while
Wow.
you were on the floor?
Isn't that something?
And Larry just said, he just about cried. He said, you don't know, you saved our life. We owe so much to you for caring enough to do that for us that night. I mean, of course, the Black people were in the worst shape and they suffered the very most, but you can see how everyone suffers. Who is this in? Whose interest is this in?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Anyway.
you know what? To add on to that, sister, when I was with Red, because like I said, he looked just like Opie. He wasn't as terrified and scared like I was. And he just made matter worse because when we was in the store, he said, I'm gonna really get him upset because he was from Georgia. And like I said, we was in Meridian, Mississippi. And I think that's Meridian, Mississippi is further up from Jackson, but on the eastern side of Mississippi. And I said, Fred, what are you about to do? That's crazy. So I thought he was, I don't know, gonna drink, some soda from the shelf, do something outlandish to draw attention. He went and grabbed my hand. And then he said to my daughter, she had a cold, come here, Leanna, my beautiful Black child. I'm like, oh, no. These guys, they really truly look like they from the Appalachian Mountains. I mean, they have the real long beards. They look, and I was like, oh my God, I might as well say my prayers. I'm telling you, when we got in the car, and he had a Mustang, an old Mustang. When we got in the car, we was taking off, and I thought everything was cool until I saw those headlights from those 3 cars deep just beating up behind them.
Yeah.
And I was like, Red, speed up, please. We all gonna be hanging from a tree. Please. I was so scared. So, sister,
Yeah.
I can agree with you 1,000%. And and doing our little chase or whatever, Red was saying, I really think my car gonna conk out. I need some tinfoil. And I'm like, what in the world is he talking about? Some tinfoil?
Hey now, look at, I know about tinfoil. That's what my mother called it. My mother called it tinfoil too. I think it's an old-fashioned term.
Absolutely. And and not only he asked for that, but he asked for a bar red. And I'm saying, what is he talking about? I don't understand him, but he was talking about beret. And I was like, what is the world? But that's like one of the, the differences, from being in the South and in the North. And I remember another scene very briefly when I went to the store, back to the store again. And these two white ladies was talking among each other. And one of them turn around and say, well, honey, I'm from God's country. And I'm like, wow, Lord. And so, I start interacting with them, talking about them. And I say, this is nice area. I'm up north. And they look and they say, oh, really? And to make a long story short, we was talking and one of the ladies said, yeah, I think I know exactly where you're referring to. And I vaguely remember the conversation, but it dealt with a particular location about a door, and the door was black. And for some reason, those ladies could not say black. They said, oh, you mean that Negro door, don't ya? And I was like, huh?
Wow.
The Negro door? And I said, no, I'm talking about the black door. And she said, no, the Negro door. And I'm like, oh, Lord.
Well,
Oh, Lord, let me not say
all
no
those,
more.
all those stories too that he related in here about the things that happened to the soldiers, they really parallel with all kinds of stories I've heard like that. In fact, that was a real big moment. I mean, it's important that he included this, I think, in the book, because it was real formative. Imagine like people who had been so emerging from slavery, right? Sharecropping, then under Jim Crow and all that. And then you gonna go to war and fight for this country. So you bearing arms, you're learning how to stand up like a man and fight for this country. And then to be humiliated or to attempt to push you back to where you were before you took that on. These soldiers weren't having it. They, as you can see, I mean, I've heard the same kind of stories. Go back and burn the barn down. Yeah, it sounds out, woo, this is wild. This is what they did. That's why they got him out of Mississippi because the fuckers weren't going to take it. They just weren't going to take it. And I mean, like Black Fire, which is the making of a Black revolutionary, or Black radical, I think he called it, by Nelson Peary, who was my mentor. And he had the same experience, he was a World War II vet. And the Army was segregated and everything. I mean, they were segregated. I mean, that wasn't that long ago, that we have emerged from that kind of condition. But anyway, I thought that was good. He included that because it was pivotal in terms of the psychic, like where the Panthers didn't come out of nothing,
No.
And
right.
And this history is important. It flows. It's like cause and effect. It's flowing. It's developing dialectically through the years, right? There are leaps that take place. Anyway.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned about the war, because I know these brothers have gone through a lot, and Aaron Dixon had mentioned about the soldiers experience PTSD from the trauma that they have to face, the point where the most insane scene where a civilian breast was cut off and was held like it was a trophy, her breast was held like a trophy.
Oh yeah.
Where they, where some people find the abnormality of things as normal. And I know that was part of what triggered on, other mental challenges. And when they returned home, of course, they did not receive any kind of, appreciation, but was hit with racism, and it was
Yeah,
hit with hatred, for fighting a war in
yeah,
which America at the time didn't condone, especially back in the 60s. So I can really feel what these brothers was going through within the army, going in the army, fighting for a country, um, of people that they didn't know about in Japan, and then coming back and have to deal with racism where their uniform was not respected. If anything, it gives other people, they feel the right to torture them, to
yeah,
break them down to nothing. And I'm sure these soldiers back then, I know most of them had transitioned, um, felt, why do I need to deal with so much hatred and so, and so much degradation, which pushed them to drinking alcohol,
yeah,
taking drugs, and saying my life is not worth it, you know. So I can imagine the paramount of struggles that they have went through, in
mhm,
which Aaron Dixon father miraculously was able to to come out of it, not safely, but to the point where he was alive and was able to do his tour and to live life
yeah,
according to how it was the Black man back then, so
yeah. I think Jay's got his hand up there. Uh,
yes, Brother Jay. And anybody else who also want to add in and come in, please come in.
I got two short stories to say.
Yeah.
The first one is that one of my Attica brothers who just transitioned some years ago by the name of Richard Clark, he went to Vietnam uh, to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And as he was walking through the woods, he ran into a Vietnamese. And the Vietnamese looked at him and said, this is not your war.
yeah,
Mm.
You don't need to be fighting me.
I heard that too.
And the
Yeah,
brother said, I'm not gonna fight you. And they took off.
awesome,
Mm.
awesome.
Now, that's what happened to him. Now I'm gonna tell you what happened to me. We talked about people who pass for white. Many people throughout the 40s and the 50s passed, black women in particular, passed for whites. And they had their reasons for doing that. Uh, when I was a kid, I'm gonna blow your mind right now what I'm about to say. When I was a kid, my mother used to tell me, "You are not white." You know why? Because she was Jamaican. She was Black Jamaican. You know, my mother used to tell me, "You are Black." And so when I used to run the streets as a kid, and I used to be put in these group homes, I noticed that they tried to isolate me from the Blacks and put me with the whites. But I happen to remember what my mother used to tell me, "You're not white." So I used to go with the Black kids, and I noticed that in these detention places, these group homes for kids, there was a lot of racism involved, especially with the white kids and the Black kids, you know. But I just grew up, man, remembering what my mother used to tell me, "You're not white, you're Black." And many times now, you know, people that don't know me, they say, You what? You black? You know, how can you be black? Look at you. Look at your complexion. I said, listen, let me tell you something, man. Let me tell you something first and foremost. My mother was black, blacker than you, because you was Jamaican, man. You know, so that's story for that, man, because that's all I have to say.
Mhm. Yeah.
I had my share of racism. I had my share of race. Not that I shared it, no, but how it impacted on me because they were always trying to isolate me and put me with the white kids and separate me from the black kids. And I just didn't understand that. So I always win with the black kids. I didn't care. And there's that white boy over there with the black kids. I'm not white.
Oh wow.
I'm not white.
You know, there's this wonderful story. There was this Jewish guy. He was a musician. He grew up in Chicago, and he was actually in the Jewish mafia. He, you know, was selling weed and shit like that. It was so crazy, but he loved the blues and jazz, and you know, he was a musician. So he really identified with the black musicians, and that's who he wanted to be with. He went to Harlem and he played in the bands, and he he got to where he thought he was black. And one time he got busted because he was selling dope. So he gets thrown into jail, and he made sure he was with the black people in the jail, and they actually thought he was black. They put down his race as black. Well, now he had real curly hair and stuff, but he wasn't black. He was Jewish. But I mean, it shows you like the whole thing is totally unscientific. The only thing that gives it any meaning in this country is because of our history of slavery.
That's right.
That's what gives this meaning. Otherwise, there's not one bit of science behind any of it. And these rulers have used this divide and conquer for so long that they will use it over and over again. And it's crazy because you have people who are your allies, the people you need to unite with for this fight. And there's this division that's been, is stabbing us in the heart with this division. So that, you got a situation where people often think that the rich man's their friend, where somebody of a different nationality is their enemy, but they're a working class person. So our people are so confused. It's up to us to get them clear on it. We're going to sort this thing out. We'll sort it out when we fight together. Like what we're doing now, we're learning together. This is how we sort this stuff, when we stand up together and struggle with this thing. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. And yeah, but I love in our statement where, Fred Hampton Jr., or not Junior, Fred Hampton said it's a class struggle, damn it. And and that's what I keep uppermost in my mind. But we can't be ignorant to our history and the facts on the ground. We have to know that that's the reality. So when I hear people try to define everything as black and white and all this, I know where it's coming from. And you can't deny it. You can't deny that there's differences and that they use those differences and that some people are getting treated worse than other people. But it's like, if you're hungry and the guy next to you, he's hungry, but he's even hungrier than you. I mean, when do we stop quibbling about, it isn't a privilege to be hungry is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There ain't no privilege here at the bottom. And this is what's happening. These people, like the white people who had it good, maybe for a long time, have lost a lot of ground. And they are scraping and struggling and looking for the rent and trying to figure out how to get by. So this is a moment I think we can break these barriers down that came from our history of slavery. We finally have an opportunity because you can unite what's equal. And if we're all shoved to the bottom, those of us at the bottom, right? I mean, I think most people know there's a middle class, brown, black, white, right? That don't share, not middle class, but I mean, more wealthy. They do not share our interests. We got a situation in Chicago, gentrification pushes out the people. Usually they'll push out people of color and some white people with more money come in. But we got a situation in Chicago where the poor brown people, poor black people are getting pushed out of the neighborhood and replaced by black people and brown people with a bunch of money. It really shows that it's a class thing, and that's where we have to, we struggle to unite what can be united. Not everything can be united.
Mhm.
That's the end of my sermon.
I love that.
It's getting, it's about 8:30.
No, not 30 here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 9:26 here.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who wants to also add into what we read that you can reflect on as far as dealing with colorism, dealing with racism, dealing with war, dealing with what the soldiers had experienced back then, or anything in regarding to the forward as well as the introduction that we just read?
I did want to point something out, sister. So in the first chapter, their ancestors, I'm kind of stuck on that piece there where he's talking about his grandmother and how she was feeling when her son was going to war.
Yeah.
And I guess as a mother of, I think all of us women on here are mothers, but I still have my little ones at home, so this will just kind of hits home. I also have my oldest son. I think about him too. He's 27 now, but that was something that early on, as soon as he was able to understand, he knew he would never go to war. Not for this country, he wouldn't be going to war. He'd be going to a different war maybe, but he wasn't going to go to war. not, and we understood that, for a long time it was just him, and, the whole thing about, there's a certain, right, like some sort of exemption or something, like if you're the only male child in the family or something, and there's a draft, you might have that exemption of not getting. But we had that conversation even as a teenager, and he very early on understood, like, that even if I were to have another male at some point, like if that, it would, no matter what the circumstances would be, that just would never be the case. He would first die before he would go, fight for this, oppressive country and upholding this oppressive system anywhere for any reason. But when it says there, it says she told me that when her son left to go to war, she let loose a sound of anguish so deep and so pained that could be heard by many of her neighbors. And that part right there, it just touched me, just to put myself in that position, and I'm thinking about, all the conversations that I had with my oldest son, and to think, there were a lot of people, we're looking at the history that Aaron Dixon speaks of in this chapter. This is history, and it's the same thing for brown people. They were, it was a way out of poverty,
Right.
to go to war, and to be made, quote unquote, illegal on your on the land that you that you're native
Yeah.
to and indigenous to, and you're thinking you're having to go fight a war so that some white man can recognize you as legal or give you some legal status, you know. So I thought about that. And you know, the poem there, you know,
Yeah.
how she's speaking of yeah. And when I first read it, I had to read it over a second time because it almost, I thought his son, her son had passed. He hadn't passed, but it was the way that she was speaking in that poem. It was almost like, you know, he had died, but it almost was. It was it was a a, a
Yeah.
death of sort. You know, she didn't know if he was coming back. You know, but
Right.
yeah. And then it says the thought of her little boy, now a man, going off to war and facing possible death was almost too much for her to bear.
Yeah.
Mm,
You know, so I thought I thought
Yeah.
about that piece right there. You know,
Yeah.
it's, and it's the trauma. You know, I don't remember if it's Michelle Alexander or who is it that, you know, there's a term, you know, because we talk about PTSD a lot, but the term PTSD really came out of shell shock syndrome having to do with
Yeah.
war, you know.
Right.
But for, you know, who was it? Do you all remember who all it was that coined a different term to speak of the historical trauma?
Oh, I don't know who it was, but I know what you're saying is correct. Shell shocked was a term used in World War II, World War One. You know, my parents used to use it. But PTSD emerged after the Vietnam War. And I
Mm,
think it was because of the special nature. You know, at least in World War II, people had, like, I don't know, the support of the country behind them. There was a certain pride, right?
true.
Everybody was going to everybody was going to war on behalf of getting rid of the Nazis who were horrible, evil, and everything. And with Vietnam, you had people were hated the war. They were really through with it. So the Vietnam
Right.
vets were not popular, you know, and also they hated the war. Like, um, who was telling us, Che, was it you about the
Hmm.
situation? Yeah, the Vietnam. That
Yeah,
that that was a story I heard many
yeah.
times. So a lot of guys, you know, drug addiction in Vietnam was huge. The soldiers were just staying, you know, hammered all the time to get through it. And then they came back to this country and they were steeped in drugs. But anyway, getting back to the feeling that I don't know, mothers and fathers, I don't know about you guys, but I'm still worried. I worry all the
Hmm.
goddamn time.
Hmm.
I worry about my grandson till I'm about ready to, you know, have a stroke. I mean, he went out, he drove out on his own when he was about 20 to the West Coast. And I was petrified. I tried to talk him out of it. And he's feeling like a grown man. I can make a trip. Why can't I make a trip? You know, he finally got mad at me. But I think it's just heart wrenching to think that you spend so much time and love and giving to your children and raising them and all you went through. And then they
Hmm.
just go off and be cannon fodder for something
Right.
you don't even agree with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And I
know
know,
for us in the in the partido, you know, this has been a conversation that we have had extensively as well, because, you know, as we were looking at the, you know, the original Chicano movement and the Raza Unida party in the 60s and 70s, and looking at the platforms, and, you know, some things have changed. And so when we were looking at them, that was one of them that came up, is, you know, we're looking at the, we're looking at the, you know, the state, you know, in our, in the Rainbow Coalition statement of unity, you know, we you know, explicitly say what that entails, you know, the police, the courts,
yeah,
the, you know, the prisons, all of that. But for us, it was, you know, that question of, you know, could somebody who served in the military or even is like an active uh police officer, would they be able to join the partido? Somebody had asked that. And so we had to have that conversation, you know, and the statement that we came out with at the end was one that was, you know, we will have revolutionary love for anybody, and we will have compassion for our people, you know, people who have served, quote unquote, served in the military, and came back wounded, traumatized. They were already wounded and traumatized to begin with, but came back even further wounded and traumatized. That we will not turn our backs on them, either judge
Right.
them, because all of us have and continue to be complicit, you know, in this capitalist state. You have to a certain extent, you know,
Right.
in order to survive. But you know, we can become so judgmental, you
Yeah.
know, you know, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and then the whole conversation of, you know, the cancel culture. So you know, people pick and choose. Oh, okay, let's say it's religion. We've had that conversation extensively on these group studies as well. But I find like those two are the main ones, you know, the issue of religion and the issue having to do with the military. And people will have some very strong beliefs about it, but you know, our people
Yeah.
are hurting, you know, and
Yeah.
we're just going to turn our backs on somebody because of
Yeah.
experiences that they've had, or because they, you know, at one point made a choice to, you know, we really have got to relook at that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it'd be totally wrong for us to sit in judgment. You know, who ends up going to war are the people who are actually starved into it. You know, I mean, rich guys, kids, they don't have to go to war. They're given special, you know, assignments, maybe if they're in the
Right.
military after they
Mhm.
get out of West Point. But no, you look at who, like we lived in West Virginia, you know, for years, and almost everybody was a vet. I mean, those people
Mm.
were poor. I mean, that's something you did. You went and into the military. That's how you got by. I mean, I've had arguments with my sons from time to time because I just couldn't stand the idea of them joining the military, but they were looking at it as an option, you know,
Mhm.
for getting an education, you know, and they'd say, well, mom, look, I just go in, there's no war on right now. I won't get hurt. You know, when I get out, I'll be able to go to college, you know, won't have to go in debt, that kind of thing. And I was like, you never know when there's going to be a war. You never know when you
Yeah.
will end up having to go fight. And I always succeeded in talking them out of it. But a lot of people don't have the luxury. They have to take what they can. You know, one thing we have to look at though, the technology has really changed the war even. Like when the Second World War was fought, I remember my mother telling me, because we would say, oh, look at something happened in Vietnam today and 5 American soldiers were killed. And she would tell me during the Second World War, we would listen to the radio and they would go 5,000 American soldiers died today.
Mm.
5,000, I mean, thousands and thousands, because it was like factories. There were a lot of people working in them, soldiers. There were a lot of people, boots on the ground, right? But that's all changed. You got people sitting in trailers in Texas,
Mhm.
you know, operating
Right.
drones over in the Middle East,
Mhm.
sending
Right down the
bombs.
street from me.
Yeah, so, you know, there isn't a career there anymore, is what I'm trying to say. It used to be, you know, young men didn't know what to do, didn't have any good prospect. They would go into the military, but they don't need anybody. They don't need us anymore like that. That's another way they don't need us.
But you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, sister, as far as the need of being in the military, like everything and technology now. Um, the next war that will happen will not be around war, is going to be most likely technology is going to be in the air where, you know, to be on foot patrol or to be in combat by foot is something that's in the past. Then again, you have to look at what Conrad Dixon's father went through, being a civilian, not knowing what he was about to face, and then he had a new life in the midst of the most violence of being actual war, and fighting a battle overseas, and then fighting a battle at home, which is far different from, you know, a number of young people being in the military today, where being in the military, especially back in the year, in the early 2000 or 90s, you went in the military so you could get free education by going to college,
Right.
and the benefits that is awarded and given by serving your country. But
Right.
that's different from the draft and having to fight in combat, and being in the middle of a vicious war, of a war, where there's no telling if you're going to come back.
Yeah.
So we have to just imagine being in that state in that time, where you had a young man who dealt with racism at home, and the time where he had to face imminent danger, where there was no guarantee that he was going to come back, even when he went to the Big M, which he thought he was going to Missouri or he was going somewhere else, and did not realize he was going in the Deep South. So he was faced with more than his share of obstacles as a Black man, where he was a doomed man. And what did Dr. Huey P. Newton say? You know, to be a revolutionary, consider yourself a doomed man.
Yeah. Right.
It fit that. And also, I just want to just briefly say that, you know, some of the comrades, especially when I had introduced, you know, the book that we read, and that we would have Aaron Dixon on. I understand that during the read, we will have him on, and I introduced that we are reading a book where we will have the opportunity to even meet the author, and we be able to ask some questions about his book and the current news that's taking place as far as with the Panther and the legacy. So someone was impressed that he will be on tonight. I have never stated that he will be on tonight, but we will be reading his book, and we will be graced by his, you know, appearance. So as far as miscommunication, or, you know, the impression that he will be on, this author will be on tonight, no, there was no notification or any kind of post that indicate he will be on tonight, but we expecting for him to be on tonight, which that will help us to know more about the purpose of him writing the book, other added information as far as the chapter that we're going to read, and also where and how the book has impressed the generation and the people in and out of the movement. Also, I just want to say that if you look in the middle of the book, you will see exactly who we are talking about concerning, you know, Brother Dixon, grandmother Emma, Mildred, Emma, and other people. He got some very impressive
Excuse me.
and clear pictures. If you see clear pictures right here. So I welcome y'all to look at this and look in the middle. And here's a picture, I believe, of his father in the service as well. So these are very clear pictures, because usually you'll see some blurry pictures that you can't even make out their faces. Because there's another book I'm reading now. Let's speak about a leader. And I'm like, are these authentic pictures or what? Because I could barely see those pictures, but these are very clear. And it really give us a face to the name. And we also have another sister here, Sister Kimberly. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Hello,
Would you like to
everyone.
add something?
Oh, power to the people. Is
Black power.
there a Kimberly, or am I mistaken?
No,
Oh, you're not
she's really
Kimberly.
Catherine.
Dick?
Right,
Catherine.
my name is Catherine.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My bad. My bad. I'm sorry, Miss Catherine. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
Anything that-
I just want to clear something up. I got a text message from a person named Panther Queen, Christina Baker, and
Okay.
she sent me the cover of Aaron's book, and she said he's going to be on a Zoom meet tonight at the reading his book, And I said, oh, great, I want to be on there. Well, it wasn't on. I couldn't get you guys. And then when I looked on there, it said it started at 3. And so I'm in San Francisco. So I
Right.
don't know what the time zone is there.
Okay, right. Matter of fact, when Brother Shamago have that Zoom update information, he did not update the date, which is the
Oh,
current
he
date
didn't
with
update the
current
date.
time,
Okay.
because this is a concurrent meeting,
Yeah.
because we're reading a series of meeting. And when he sent the update, it was during the
Right.
time that we began our live. So I
Right.
really couldn't get into adjusting what should have been taken out. Matter of fact, there should be no date and time, since it's concurrent, except for the times that we are on. So what I shared to you is exactly what was actually updated in our chat group.
Okay.
So as far as
You mean what you
Aaron's Bible,
shared with Panther Queen? Because I had absolutely no communication. What I did was I called Aaron, and Aaron said
you
he's,
did?
yeah, he told, well, I know Aaron. I mean, I'm
Oh,
a Black
good.
Panther, so I called him, and he said he's not aware of any Zoom meet today. And I said, well, that's
No.
strange, because I got a text message from this community sister that said you were going to be on here talking about your book. So
No.
he said no one
No,
called
yeah,
him about it.
that message, no, that's not that wasn't a message intended. We
Yeah.
were reading his book, and we would have him as a guest, but it was no indication that he would be on today, and that was never communicated. So of course, yes, that was a miscommunication. I do apologize that it was communicated that way, and I
Yeah.
will exactly what I sent her. But
Okay.
that he will serve as a guest speaker because of his connection with
Right.
Brother Kwame.
Mhm.
But I don't even know when he's coming on, but it would be great as him being, the author as well as
Oh,
a guest speaker.
I'm sure he would have been on
Elaborate.
today.
Huh?
I'm sure he would have been on today. He just said he didn't know about
Right.
it.
Right. And
I
you
would
know
have
what?
loved
We
him to
would
be on too, because I texted him. I said, I'm waiting to see you on Zoom. We're waiting for you to be on there.
Oh no. No, it was no indication of him coming on today, so that we was speaking about the book, and we will have him as a guest speaker, but no indication of he'll be on today, because I don't have no way to connect with him. I just sent him a
Okay.
text, but I have no connection with him except to know that he's one of our commanded elder. But I'd be so happy and so honored for him to grace us with his appearance and,
Yeah,
elaborate
I'll
more about the
encourage
book.
him.
Yeah.
I'll encourage him to be on here. This is great. I think
Yeah,
he'll be honored to talk about it.
right, because there's so much that he can add. And I thank you, Sister Catherine,
Mhm.
for mentioning this, because one thing that I learned, not only that having this book club is like also the a blueprint of what our legacy greats like Aaron Dixon have written, but it impacts lives where people's lives are being safe behind this, as
Yeah,
well as changing their mindset
yeah,
from what they could have done to what they should do and what they need to do
yeah.
to achieve their goals. And I
Okay.
personally had on a conversation in which I was hearing other comrades speak so highly about something that had pretty much fade away, you can say. And like it's a trend, and it's supposed to be part of the movement, it's supposed to be part of the organization, whether it's about liberation, whether it's about nationalism,
Mm-hmm.
anything. Learn about your past, present,
Mm-hmm.
as well as your future. What are you fighting for when you don't know what you're reading about? You know, in the course of you, committing to a movement, giving an oath, or giving a pledge, you know. Oh, okay. I just want to say that Sister Leslie have to leave. She have to handle other matters. So I thank her
Yeah,
for
I got a
filling in.
minute left too, because I got another Zoom meet I have to be in, but
Okay, sister. But I thank you so much. And matter of fact, I'm going to put in a text in the chat in which I have sent information about the book and
mhm.
about Dixon being a guest member, where we will let them, or I will let know when he will grace us with his presence. And I thank you again for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. And before I go off, the women of the Black Panther, I don't know if you've heard of, but we have a book out. It's called The Comrade Sisters, and it's called The Women of the Black Panther. And I've done some speaking engagements with Erica Huggins and Angela LeBlanc, and it's regarding the Oakland Community School and my life and what I did while I was in the party. So at any time you want to talk about that book, or we can we can read some some excerpts from the book, or you can just order the book from me and we can talk about it on the Zoom meet. It's a very nice book though,
I
because
bet
the
it
women
is.
of the party, we don't have that much. We didn't have that much of a voice. The leadership was the voice, which it was which was Elaine Brown,
Right.
and Angela Davis. But Angela Davis she was in the party when she was incarcerated, but then when she was out, she began to do speaking engagements and go to school and whatnot. But we can talk about some of that if you'd like.
I thank you
I
so
After
much.
the
And
book,
matter of
after your
fact,
book, after Aaron's book.
I think that
yeah,
was
I think it's
the
so nice. And I appreciate that, because I think um, it's time for us to not only read about the great men who have sacrificed, but also the women, where
Yeah.
I'm sure you can say 77% of the women headed or were, involved in the Panther
Oh
back
yeah,
then.
very much so. The
And
backbone of the
yeah,
party.
yes. So I'm like 1,000% for it, because I'm telling you, women like you and like Veronica say, I thank you for your service, sister. Because if it
Thank
wasn't
you.
for the greats like you, Miss Elaine, as well as Angela, would there be a Panther? Would there be a Black Panther party the
Mm-hmm.
way, people know it to be? and know the truth about it, I seriously doubt it. I seriously
Yeah.
doubt it. So I really appreciate it. Yes, sister. And please include your information, so this way we can stay connected, and definitely we'll let you know, especially I believe you have connection with Brother Kwame. If that, we will definitely communicate, so this way you can come back and tell us more about, the times when you were Panthers in the
Right.
60s and 70s, respectfully,
Mhm.
and what you're doing now. I appreciate it so much.
All right, I'm just gonna put my email address in, and you
Okay.
can just so I can just get myself in there with you if you need to communicate with me. But there in no way am I wanting to interfere with this, what you guys got going on with
Right.
with
We usually
Aaron's
vote.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we really vote. But this book has been selected to us because of the fact Brother Kwame is familiar with this book,
Mhm.
and he had mentioned that he had contact with Brother Dixon, and this is one book that, as a revolutionary, we should get involved with. This is a book I have not read, and I'm very interested to hear the ins and the outs of what this brother has to go through, which should be on every revolutionary book list. So I'm very excited behind that.
Okay.
All right.
My information is coming in two parts because I accidentally hit the return button. And
Oh,
so
you good.
gmail.com is coming through.
Okay, let me see if
Yeah.
I see right here.
Yeah, there it is.
It's
A lovely
let's see.
daughter 1972@gmail.com.
Oh, so it's I love,
A
and is
love.
that a one?
It's a lovely daughter. This heart and a one.
That's
I don't know. No, that's
that's
not me.
yeah, no, that was just me
That's you.
liking your message.
Oh, I see. A lovely. Okay, I
A
got
lovely
it.
daughter 1972, and on the bottom after the heart and the one, it's me
At
again.
Gmail.
At gmail.com.
I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it. So I have you.
Yeah.
I have you, and I appreciate that so much, sister.
Yeah.
I appreciate
No
that.
problem.
Okay. All right.
If you don't mind, I have to leave to another Zoom meet, but when is the next one that you're having here regarding the book?
Please come Sunday.
Okay,
That's
Sunday,
it.
what time? I'm in San Francisco, so what time is a good time? Because I want to make sure I get the times right.
It's gonna be 7 Eastern Standard Time, Veronica, or would that be 9:00?
I believe it was gonna be 8. It was gonna be 8 o'clock Central Standard Time.
Central Standard Time. Okay, so it'd be 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you take that back, that'd be around.
Yeah, Pacific
7
is
o'clock.
2 hours prior. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that would,
Okay, around 7.
right. And
Okay.
I'll send a reminder. I'll send it to your email,
Oh,
sister,
good.
and I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat. Okay.
All right.
And I will definitely get in contact with Panther Queen and let her know more information, because I thought she would be on tonight. I don't know what happened. I think
She was she was going to be on tonight, and I texted her and I said there's no information on where's the Zoom meet number's not on the front cover that she sent me, and she sent me the front cover of the book. I already know that front cover, but when she sent it, she didn't send the Zoom meet address, so I didn't know where to go, and I texted her back and she said, I don't know what it is. So I don't know who she found it from, but later on she texted me back and she said, oh, I got it and I'm gonna Zoom it to you.
Right,
Yes.
she was speaking to me. directly, but I did not post anything because
Oh, okay.
of the fact we did not know if we was gonna go forward with the current
Oh,
I guess
okay.
meeting time and
Right.
information, or if we had to start a new room. So I said, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
post anything until I hear from our IT guy, which is
Right.
Brother Tamargo. And he sent us the Zoom information 10 minutes before we started the meeting. So that's when
Okay.
I went ahead and sent what he had posted.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I'm gonna make
No
sure
problem.
that you take out the time so this way it won't confuse anyone. And I thank you again, sister, and I don't want to prolong your time, but I look forward to seeing you this Sunday. And I'm sure we're gonna dive furthermore into this book. And you can have moderators because we need moderators. We need
Oh,
moderators. We do. All
okay.
right.
What a nice platform. You know what? Before I go off, Shay,
Yeah.
I appreciate your story that you told about what your mom was telling you that you're black and you're not. Was she telling you you were black?
Yeah. She was telling me that I was black because of what was happening is that a lot of white kids used to call me white. And she used to tell me, don't let people tell you you are white, you are black.
Yeah.
And being
See,
that she was Jamaican, she was from Jamaica, you know, she came to the States in 1919. That was from there she went to Puerto Rico. So
uh-huh.
you know, all
Okay.
my grandparents came with her too, you know, so they were Jamaicans. You know, how they got in Puerto Rico, I don't know. And, yeah, the thing is, oh God.
You know, it reminds me of I had two adopted brothers. Okay, they were white, but that they identify as black. I mean, they're white with blonde hair.
Mm.
Well, I don't
But
have.
they grew up.
If I let my hair grow,
Okay. It's all right. Well, their hair will never get nappy. But the point I'm making is that they grew up in my family. I mean, they were raised with us. My daughter and all, they're the same age, and so he identified as black. But by the time he got in high school, you know, the school contacted my mom, and they said he's having a really big problem. And my mom said, "Well, what is it?" They said, "Well, he thinks he's black, and we keep telling him he's not." And she said, "Well, if he identifies as black, then let him be that."
That's right.
That he grew up in a black family, and he wanted to identify as a black person because he acts like us. And so, you know, I'm just saying that to say that I just caught that snippet of your story, and it took me back to where, you know, the struggle. That's what you were talking about, how it's a struggle, you know, with
you know, I was just gonna say, you know, when I used to go to Puerto Rico, man, when I was small, my grandfather would sit me down and tell me his history, and he came from slavery. You know, my grandmother was a slave. You know, and they always they always instill in me that pride, that black pride.
Yeah. See, and that's what he had.
Yeah, you know,
He just had the black pride, you know. He felt good being white, but in a black skin. You know, he just felt good being black. He knew what it felt like to be black, you know. And then as he grew up, he also began to see how he was being treated as a white person.
Yeah,
you know, and that, he wanted to change that. He said, "No, I'm not leaving my mom. I'm not going anywhere. You're not taking me away," because they wanted to take him away once he got 18. You know, they do that to them. And my mom cried. He cried and cried, and we cried. But, you know, we had to follow what the system or the state law has for, you know, children that are foster children or adopted. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's another topic that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I got to get out of here, but I will definitely be back on at Sunday. And just send
Good.
a reminder, because sometimes I do get busy and I will forget. And then later on at night, I'll be like, oh my God, I forgot to be.
You
Yeah.
forgot. And also, we on Monday as well, and the time is, I believe, 7 p.m.
5 o'clock.
Central Standard Time.
You
Is it
said 5?
5, right? Is
Oh,
it 5?
5 in the evening?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of
Well,
12.
I'll try to be on. I'll see how I can do this now, because I like this because I'm at home. I don't have to go
Right.
anywhere, and we're on Zoom.
Mhm, mhm.
And we can share each other war
And we
stories,
can share.
suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can also come up with some ideas too on how you can
Monday,
still
Definitely.
Monday is 5
be
5
productive.
p.m. PST time.
Okay.
Right. So
And,
what we're
and
gonna do
Sunday
is,
is EST time, Eastern time,
yeah,
at 2 o'clock
sister,
Sunday.
yeah, what we'll do is post the flyer so you have each
Yeah,
time. So this way, and we also will back that up with a reminder. I
yeah,
try to do that so this way, if people say, "Oh yeah," just like what you're saying, I forgot. Let me make myself available and say, "Oops, I forgot." So definitely, this is important, and I appreciate. How do you call on chat? If some more people want to come in, and we about to wrap it up. But sister,
Okay.
yes, we love you. Come on back. We need
I'll be
more
back.
moderators and participating members, and we got to keep this alive, this blueprint alive, and expanding our political education and having these important discussions of the past, the present, and the future.
Okay.
I don't know any other organization doing this, but it's great that we have a coalition now, the two second rainbow coalition that's doing this.
Oh, there's another coalition group doing that?
Well, you have the first Rainbow Coalition, but the next generation, which they are, is the second Rainbow Coalition.
Okay, so you guys are from the second Rainbow Coalition.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But this is the book club. But we are like a community of different organizations, formations,
Okay.
and groups. Right. So definitely come back. So I don't know anybody else is doing it, but this is fantastic, and it's really part of the general order anyway. So this way we be aware of each other, we stay connected, and we know
Yes.
exactly what we're doing.
Exactly. Okay. Well, then
All
I'll
right,
see you all Sunday.
Yes.
Shay, Shamako Noble, and Veronica in Texas.
Yes, yes.
I'll see you all Sunday.
Okay,
All
sis.
power to
Have a
the
good
people.
All
evening.
right.
power to the
Black
people.
power.
All
Black
power to
power.
the people.
So my remaining brothers and sisters who are on tonight, is there anything else that you want to add? Because this is really interesting that Brother Dixon had mentioned so many points, elements that what we face today in our movement, from dealing with the war, racism, colorism, poverty, of course, oppression. Is there anything else that you want to add to what we read?
I do not, sister. I do not have anything else to add today.
Yeah, and
But
I
I'm
just
glad I
want
was
to
able to make it.
thank y'all. I want to thank you, Sister Veronica, for coming in, Sister Leslie, Brother Chad. You are so amazing, because I'm like, when is going to start? Who's going to start this meeting? Who's going to moderate? But you know what? It doesn't matter who moderates. It's the fact we are together and we can discuss something that's so important as far as our legacy is concerned. So I
Yeah.
knew it was going to come together. How? I just didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But I
let
thank
me
you
say
all for
this.
joining us.
Let me say this, that we are forming a strong legacy for our
Yes,
future,
we are.
for our future.
That's why, Veronica, when you said this, we got to press forward. We cannot skip a beat. And I say, sister, you know what? You are right. You are right. We cannot cancel this. We have to go on, even if we are the only one. Or if we, can substitute something in place of what we are doing, as long as it's in relation to it. We got to press forward, because this is not only a calling, but it impacts lives. And I did not know that until I had several discussions with comrades where they say, you know what, I could have done this last week. But when I got involved in this and see what you're doing, you really changed my mind for something that's criminality to something that's revolutionary. And I was like, wow. And I just
Yeah.
let that comrade speak. I'm like, I
Yeah.
appreciate you. So
Yeah,
I
that's
thank
beautiful.
you. If there's anything else you want to say, because we gone past 3 hours, if there's anything that anybody want to say, add, or any concerns? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna clarify, as far as our guest speaker is concerned, because we will have detail like when he's gonna come on. But I appreciate reading about his life and having that legacy. Great to be among us to tell us more about this information, and can't wait for him to speak. And I thank Brother Kwame for giving us the opportunity and the platform to present and to be part of an important and amazing movement in reading, not for fun, but reading to educate us, to service us, to facilitate us, and allowing this to be presented before the Second Rainbow Coalition, as well as with the United Panther Movement. And I look forward to seeing everybody on Sunday. Okay. And y'all stay into and always keep it
Much love.
revolutionary.
Much love.
So anybody want to count down, or do y'all want me to count down, or what?
You got you
Yeah.
you are you're the person, sister.
Okay.
You're the person who counts us down. You got that energy.
Okay. It's so funny. I want to add that Sister Leslie's supposed to be the moderator. She started off, and I'm into this. So if Brother Shamako is on, we be closing out right now. Brother Shay, do you want to say something before we count down?
Yeah, we love you.
Ah, brother, my
Ashe.
homie, my neighbor, I love you too. And I'm my sister. You're my sister for life and power and strength. I appreciate you. And everybody that will be seeing this recap, we welcome you to come and join us Friday, Sunday, and Monday. Until then, I'm going to count down now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Black power.
All power to the people.